Have you ever wondered what secrets hide behind the closed doors of the ultra-rich, beneath the glittering chandeliers and hushed corridors of a billionaire's mansion? Unimaginable dreams and untold stories often lie unnoticed. Today you'll discover one such story that began under a roof of unimaginable wealth, where the unlikeliest encounter sparked a chain of events that would shake the lives of everyone involved. A diligent maid with a hidden ambition, a ruthless tycoon haunted by ghosts of the past, and a single late-night discovery that changed everything. Brace yourself for a tale of ambition, betrayal, and hard-earned redemption you'll never forget. Billionaire Rand Harrington was known throughout the world for his ruthless business acumen and extravagant lifestyle. He lived in a sprawling estate perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean near Laguna Beach, California. Anyone who had the chance to glimpse the mansion recognized it as a kingdom in its own right, a private paradise, complete with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and over 15 rooms, each laden with state-of-the-art technology. His personal chef was rumored to have served at the White House. His security staff boasted ex-CIA agents, and every detail from the polished gold banisters to the imported Italian drapes was a testament to Rand's staggering wealth. Rand didn't keep a large staff on hand at all times. He preferred privacy, so his domestic team consisted of a few trusted employees, a longtime butler named Johnson, a chef, 2 rotating groundskeepers, and 4 housemaids who worked on different shifts. One of these maids was Nia Wilson. Nia was a quiet yet determined young woman, an African-American in her mid-20s with luminous, deep brown eyes. She had been employed by the Harrington household for 3 months. The staff barely noticed her. As someone who mostly cleaned in the late evenings, she was often invisible in the background of Rand's hectic schedule. Nia's family background was a complicated one. She hailed from an inner-city area of Atlanta, Georgia, an environment that was a far cry from the tranquil, wealthy enclaves of Orange County. From the first day she arrived, Nia realized the Harrington mansion was unlike anything she had ever seen. Majestic paintings worth millions of dollars lined the halls. Priceless sculptures dotted the corridors. But while the other maids would sometimes gawk at the opulence, Nia barely spared them a glance. She was polite, efficient, and strictly focused on her job. In fact, whenever she found a brief moment alone, her attention was frequently captured by something else: books. One night, as Rand dealt with a restless bout of insomnia, he found himself wandering through the cavernous rooms of his estate. It was nearly 2 a.m. He couldn't sleep, his mind swimming with the day's events and upcoming deals. Earlier, he had held a tense negotiation with some venture capitalists from Goldman Sachs over a possible merger. He was winning, of course, but not as cleanly as he'd prefer. Anxiety churned through his system, so he rose from bed and wandered in search of a distraction. His feet carried him to the lesser-used wing of the mansion, a quiet area with a cozy reading nook where the staff sometimes organized cleaning supplies. He noticed a sliver of light creeping from beneath a door. Curious and slightly irritated at the idea of someone being awake at this late hour, he turned the knob and looked inside. There, hunched over a desk with a single lamp illuminating her face, was Nia Wilson. She wasn't dozing off. She was wide awake and deeply absorbed in a textbook. Rand noticed the cover. It was a used biology book from the local community college. Around her lay more materials: papers, highlighters, and a battered laptop with pages of typed notes open. She was so immersed in her work that she didn't notice Rand standing in the doorway, arms folded, eyebrows raised. He cleared his throat, and the effect was immediate. Nia jumped and nearly dropped her pen. Her eyes widened in shock and embarrassment. "Mr. Harrington," she stammered, snapping the laptop closed. He looked at her sternly, although more out of surprise than anger. "I wasn't aware the staff used my reading nook as a study hall," he said dryly. I'm so sorry, sir," Naya said, struggling for composure. "I usually finish my chores early, and I thought I just needed a quiet place to study. Please forgive me. I didn't mean any intrusion." Rand's gaze swept the room. Everything was spotless, a testament to how meticulously she kept the space. His annoyance slowly gave way to curiosity. Study what Naya hesitated, then drew in a breath. "I'm pursuing a degree in biochemistry, sir." He couldn't help but raise his eyebrows again. "A degree in biochemistry?" While working as a maid, she nodded chest tight with anxiety. "Yes, sir. I'm attending online and evening classes at Orange Coast Community College. It's part of their transfer program to a 4-year university, hopefully." Rand sighed. He felt a faint stirring of something in his chest, something he would have called pity if not for his own complicated relationship with emotions. He was wealthy beyond measure, and here was someone burning the midnight oil fighting for a chance at a better future. "You should be sleeping at this hour if you have chores to do the next day," he scolded lightly. "Does Johnson know about this?" "No, sir." "But I'm not slacking, I promise. I finish all my tasks before I study, and I only rest after my classes are done." She caught herself realizing she was babbling to a man who could fire her with a snap of his fingers. "I'll pack up immediately." Rand paused, his eyes locked on Nia's notes. "We'll discuss this in the morning. Go get some rest." She nodded, thoroughly unnerved. As she gathered her belongings, a sense of doom loomed. Would she be fired for using Mr. Harrington's property for personal reasons? She'd only chosen the nook because it was quiet, comfortable, and private where she wouldn't disturb anyone. But apparently, it had disturbed him. With a pounding heart, she left uncertain of how this tiny late-night discovery would change her life. The next morning brought no immediate summons. Nia went about her duties, scrubbing floors and polishing surfaces all the while, anticipating a call to Rand's office, or worse, the dreaded pink slip from Johnson. But the morning passed quietly. The other maids spoke in hushed tones about Rand's mood, apparently baffled by his reclusive behavior. He wasn't in his usual seat in the lounge. In fact, he seemed to be in the midst of phone calls, locked away in his private study. Around lunchtime, Naya carried a tray of fresh fruit and tea to Rand's office door, an errand typically done by the butler, but Johnson had asked her to fill in while he handled some other tasks. She knocked softly. Enter Rand's voice came through the heavy oak. She stepped inside to find him behind a mahogany desk, stacked with files, a Bloomberg terminal, open to stock trends, and multiple iPads and phones strewn about. The sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows glinted off his cufflinks. His eyes flicked to her as she placed the tray on a side table. "Ah, Nia," he said, his tone neutral. "Just the person I wanted to see." Her stomach clenched. She forced herself to look composed. "Yes, sir." Rand leaned back in his leather chair, regarding her carefully. "I'd like you to come back after lunch. We have something to discuss." Her heartbeat hammered against her ribcage, but her voice remained steady. "Of course, sir." He turned his attention back to his phone, dismissing her with a curt nod. She bowed her head slightly and exited, barely breathing, until the heavy door clicked shut behind her. At lunch, she picked at her food, hardly tasting anything, while the rest of the staff chatted about their own affairs. When she returned to Rand's office, he waved her towards a sleek chair opposite his desk. She sat spine straight, hands folded in her lap. He cleared his throat. I want you to explain this biochemistry pursuit of yours more thoroughly. Nia hesitated, reining in her nerves. I've always loved science, especially medical research. My goal is to eventually transfer to a university, hopefully somewhere like the University of California, Irvine, and get a degree in biochemistry. From there, I'd like to go into pharmaceutical research or medical laboratory science. It's something I'm passionate about. Pharmaceutical research, Rand repeated, almost incredulous. What made you want that? Nia swallowed. My grandmother died of complications related to diabetes. She couldn't afford the best care, and by the time we got her to an excellent hospital, it was too late. It made me wonder why treatments weren't more advanced, more accessible, and I felt I wanted to be part of the solution. He tapped his fingers on the desk. And you think the best path is through a degree in biochemistry? That's the plan. But it's expensive, sir. I have scholarships, but they don't cover everything. That's why I'm working here. Also, it's extremely competitive. I need good grades, good references, everything. Rand nodded, face inscrutable. I see. And what about your family? Are you supporting anyone else? Nia sighed. I help my younger brother with bills when I can. He's still living back in Atlanta, trying to finish high school in a tough neighborhood. My mum? Well, she's not in the picture anymore. My dad's gone too. It's just my brother and me. Rand looked away, glancing at the Bloomberg terminal, where stock prices flickered in neon green and red. Something shifted in his expression, a moment of empathy perhaps. But as quickly as it came, it vanished. In that case, let's make a deal, he said, matter-of-factly. I'm not firing you. If anything, I admire the effort. But I do want to ensure that your job performance doesn't suffer. Understood. Nia nodded so quickly that relief washed over her like a tidal wave. Yes, sir. Thank you. Also, you will need a better environment for studying than that cramped nook, he said, flipping open a folder. I have an unused study room near the west wing. It has a desk computer, better lighting, and fewer distractions. You'll use that from now on after your duties are complete. Her eyes widened. That's extremely generous. Thank you so much. I promise I'll keep up with all my maid responsibilities. Rand held up a hand. That's not all. I want to see your grades every quarter, and I expect you to maintain at least a B average. If you fail to do that, the deal is off. Go back to your nook or find another job. Clear. Nia nodded, tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. Yes, sir. I promise. He shuffled some papers. That's all then. Go on about your work. She stood to leave, bowing slightly in gratitude. As she closed the office door behind her, she felt an odd, disorienting swirl of relief and renewed determination. Rand Harrington wasn't exactly warm or fatherly, but his unexpected support lit a tiny spark of hope in her, that perhaps her path to a better life wasn't as impossible as she feared. The arrangement that Rand proposed quickly became a new routine for Nia. During the day, she performed her maid duties with utmost focus, ensuring every floor was mopped to a shine, every carpet vacuumed free of a single crumb. By early evening, as the rest of the staff wound down, she would slip into the designated study room in the west wing, a space that left her breathless at first glance. The room overlooked the sea, furnished with a heavy oak desk, comfortable ergonomic chair, and shelves lined with old leather-bound volumes of classics. A computer sat on a sleek glass side table, complete with the latest software. The window let in the evening breeze, making the space feel more like a luxurious personal library than a workplace. Compared to the cramped corners she was used to, it was a haven. She dived into her coursework, sometimes losing track of time, until the hush of midnight told her it was time to rest before the next day's chores. At first, she expected frequent check-ins from Rand, but he largely kept his distance. She would hand him her grades at the end of every quarter, as promised, though. Each time he gave a brief nod, made a note in a small planner, and said no more. Months passed. Naya advanced through her community college program, scoring top marks in organic chemistry, microbiology, and advanced mathematics. Word of her arrangement with Rand eventually spread among the household staff, and while some teased her that she was the boss's pet project, she shrugged it off. She was here for a reason to secure her future. But unbeknownst to Naya, Rand was keeping a closer eye on her progress than she realized. On evenings when business deals weighed on him too heavily, or after nights of lavish parties, he would wander the halls and pause outside the study room, listening to the faint sound of her pen scratching or her typing away. Perhaps he felt a pang of fatherly concern, or perhaps it was merely intellectual curiosity. The truth was, he couldn't entirely ignore the determination that burned in Nia's eyes. It reminded him of someone himself. Rand had come from wealth, yes, but he had also clawed his way to the top through unrelenting dedication. He recognized a spark of that same relentlessness in Naya. Sometimes in those silent moments outside her study room, he found himself strangely proud. But showing such emotions openly was alien to him. One day, Naya accidentally overheard a heated argument between Rand and an unfamiliar woman with an icy voice. She had been dusting a corridor near Rand's office when the woman's raised tone halted her. She couldn't see them, but their words drifted out. "I want what I'm owed, Rand," the woman said. "You can't run from your obligations. I'm not running from anything." Karen Rand shot back. "We had an understanding. If you think the woman," Karen cut him off. "Don't pretend this isn't about control. Your father might be gone, but the Harrington name still means something. You owe it to his estate to keep the lines intact." Nia froze in place. It felt wrong to eavesdrop, but her curiosity wouldn't let her move. Rand's voice was lower now, dangerously so. "That's enough, Karen. I know exactly why you're here. You think you can blackmail me?" A bitter laugh. "Blackmail. Let's call it familial obligation. We'll see how philanthropic your heart can be, or how easily the public might learn the less savory details about your father's—" "Get out!" Rand roared. Naya darted away before they could notice her. She retreated to the kitchen, heart-pounding mind swirling with questions. Who was Karen? What secrets lurked in Rand's past, in the Harrington family legacy? She realized for the first time that the man who had shown her a shred of kindness carried a heavy burden of his own. Weeks later, Rand did something that took everyone by surprise. He invited Naya to an exclusive charity gala hosted at the Harrington mansion. Typically, Rand's parties were star-studded affairs with celebrities, CEOs, and politicians. The staff was permitted to serve canapés and champagne, but not mingle. This time, Rand specifically requested Nia to be more than just a maid. He asked her to dress nicely and present herself as one of his guests. She was dumbfounded. Why would he want her there? She had no formal attire suitable for such an event, no knowledge of how to navigate the glamorous crowd. Yet Rand insisted, stating it would be an educational opportunity. He even had Johnson arrange for a stylist to help her find a suitable evening gown. The night of the gala arrived. Hollywood A-listers, tech moguls, and philanthropic giants descended on the estate. Television cameras from local stations reported on the Harrington charity ball, with all proceeds supposedly going to medical research organizations. Nia's heart hammered as she stepped out of her modest room, wearing an elegant but simple black gown that hugged her figure. She had minimal jewelry, just a small bracelet her grandmother once gave her. But somehow, the look came together naturally. As she walked into the grand ballroom, heads turned. Few recognized her, but they noticed her graceful presence. Rand was busy greeting important guests, yet he glanced her way, gave a slight nod of approval, then resumed charming a cluster of potential investors. During the event, Nia wandered carefully around the room, trying to stay inconspicuous. She marveled at the opulence carved ice sculptures, world-class hors d'oeuvre, and a live orchestra playing classical melodies. A silent auction was being held to raise funds for cancer and diabetes research. Oddly enough, she felt both intimidated and inspired. This was a world she had never imagined seeing up close. At one point, she found herself chatting with a woman who introduced herself as Dr. Clarissa Miles, an immunologist from the University of California, Irvine. "I'm here because Mr. Harrington's foundation is donating a large sum to our new lab." Dr. Miles said, her eyes alight with passion for her work. "We're working on cutting-edge therapies for autoimmune diseases." Nia's eyes widened in genuine excitement. "That's incredible. I'm studying biochemistry right now. My dream is to work in pharmaceutical research, maybe one day, in a lab like yours." "Really?" Dr. Miles raised her eyebrows. "My goodness, it's rare to meet someone in that field here. Usually it's a sea of millionaires who only talk about profits. You must tell me more." Nia explained her situation briefly, her community college background, and her aspiration to transfer to a more prominent university. Dr. Miles nodded, intrigued. "Here's my card," she said. "I'd love to talk with you further. Maybe even let you visit our lab sometime, see what real research looks like." Before Nia could fully express her gratitude, Dr. Miles was whisked away by another donor, but the card stayed in Nia's hand like a precious token of possibility. Later in the evening, Rand discreetly pulled Nia aside. "So did you find it educational?" he asked, a faint glint in his eyes. She held up Dr. Miles's card. "Actually, yes. This could be a huge opportunity, and I can't thank you enough." He nodded, the corners of his mouth twitching into something resembling a small smile. "Just remember, you earned that moment with your own effort and achievements. All I did was open a door." In the weeks that followed, Dr. Miles stayed true to her word. She invited Nia for a tour of the UCI lab. For the first time in her life, Nia was surrounded by state-of-the-art equipment, centrifuges, spectrometers, complex gene sequencing machines. It was overwhelming, but also exhilarating. She spoke with researchers, asked questions, and discovered how cutting-edge technology was helping advance medical science. Dr. Miles was impressed by Nia's questions and knowledge base. "You're quite bright," she said. "Have you considered applying to UCI's transfer program? With your grades, you have a strong chance, especially if you have letters of recommendation." Nia flushed with a mix of excitement and uncertainty. "I want to, but finances are tricky." Dr. Miles shrugged. "Scholarships grants Harrington's philanthropic connections. There's always a way. And I'm happy to write you a recommendation if you keep your grades high." Hope blossomed in Nia's chest. That evening she returned to the Harrington mansion almost floating on air. For the first time, a future in a real research lab didn't seem like a distant dream. But fate has a way of dealing unexpected blows. When she entered the estate, the staff was abuzz with tension. Johnson rushed over. "Miss Wilson, I need to speak with you immediately. She tensed. Is everything all right? His expression was grim. Mr. Harrington. He's had a confrontation with that relative of his again. Karen. It's escalated. She's threatened to go public with damaging information about the Harrington family if he doesn't meet certain demands. It's complicated, but it's put Mr. Harrington in a foul mood. I'd advise you to be cautious if you speak with him. Nia's heart sank. She didn't want to pry, but she sensed the tension might spill over. Indeed, in the days that followed, Rand stormed around the mansion in a near-constant state of irritability. Staff kept their heads down to avoid his wrath. Deals that had been poised to close were suddenly in jeopardy as negative press about Harrington Enterprises began to surface rumors of insider trading, unethical acquisitions, and hush-money payoffs. None of it was proven, but smoke rarely rose without fire. Nia tried to remain invisible, doing her job and studying without drawing attention. But one afternoon, Rand cornered her in the hallway. You come here, he snapped. Have you seen the tabloids? She shook her head, nerves prickling. No, sir. Good, he said, although he didn't look pleased. They're sensationalizing everything, digging into my father's past, dredging up ancient rumors. Karen's fueling it. She wants a slice of the family fortune, claiming it's owed to her. Nia frowned. I'm sorry you're going through this. He waved a hand dismissively. Save the pity. This is just how the game is played. But I won't let her tarnish my reputation or ruin the business I built with my own hands. She nodded, unsure of what to say. Before she could speak again, Rand added, Don't let this nonsense distract you. You have finals coming up, right? Keep your focus. Then he stalked off, leaving her simultaneously relieved and unsettled. As time wore on, the tension in the Harrington household only grew. Karen's media tactics were relentless. Old photos, insinuations of Rand's father's illicit affairs, allegations of bribery and foreign deals. Everything was thrown at the Harrington empire. The stock price of Harrington Enterprises took a noticeable dip, and Rand found himself under investigation by regulatory bodies that, while not actually finding solid evidence of wrongdoing, added to the public perception of scandal. Nia continued working diligently and studying. She maintained a respectful distance from Rand's troubles. Yet one evening, as she sat in the study room working on her final paper, the door burst open. It was Rand, looking as though he'd aged a decade overnight. His tie was loosened, his hair disheveled, and a frantic light burned in his eyes. Nia, get your things, he said, voice trembling with uncharacteristic vulnerability. She sprang to her feet, alarmed. Sir, what's wrong? He drew a shaky breath, trying to regain composure. We're going to Boston. Tonight. She blinked in confusion. Boston. He nodded sharply. We've just acquired a biotech startup out there. Kind of a lifeline deal. I need to finalize the contract in person to ensure the board doesn't lose faith. You're coming because I need your perspective on the research. This company deals with the same sort of medical innovation you're studying. Her mind reeled. Are you sure I don't want to impose. He snorted. Impose? I'm ordering you as your employer. My private jet leaves in 3 hours. Despite the swirl of confusion, a surge of excitement rushed through her. He wanted her to weigh in on something biotech-related. She'd never been on a private jet in her life, and she had final exams next week. Yet Rand's tone left no room for argument. The next thing she knew, she was in a limousine with Rand heading to a private airstrip. The staff's eyes had nearly popped out of their heads when Rand instructed Nia to pack a bag. On the ride, Rand rubbed his temples, scanning through piles of documents. Occasionally he tossed a few pages to her, pointing out certain aspects of the biotech's research. Here he said, "They're working on a drug that could potentially revolutionize immunotherapy. But I need an opinion from someone who's not a biased expert on my payroll." Nia skimmed the documents, heart pounding. She recognized some references to advanced protein engineering topics only briefly touched upon in her coursework, yet enough that she could sense potential pitfalls. She carefully raised a few points, suggesting the company might be overselling certain trial results. Rand listened, his expression grave. They boarded the sleek Gulfstream jet, soon after which soared into the night sky. Inside plush leather seats surrounded a conference table. Rand pored over more documents, occasionally glancing at the passing clouds out the window. Something about him looked tired, haunted. During the flight, they hardly spoke. Once they landed in Boston, a car whisked them to a luxury hotel near Cambridge, not far from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Nia barely slept, her mind spinning with confusion, anticipation, and more than a little fear. She had no idea what the coming day would bring. The following morning, Rand and Nia arrived at a towering office building in downtown Boston. A crisp winter wind blew through the streets, so different from sunny California. Nia shivered in her modest coat, trailing after Rand, who wore a tailored suit and a grim expression. Inside, they met with the biotech startup's founders in a glossy conference room. Charts and graphs projected onto a screen, detailing the company's breakthroughs in immunotherapy. As the meeting progressed, it became clear that the startup was in dire need of funds to move forward with clinical trials. Rand wanted to invest, but he also wanted to ensure the technology wasn't a scam or half-baked hype. To Nia's surprise, Rand motioned her to speak. Nervous adrenaline thrummed in her veins. She looked around at a table of executives who probably had PhDs or MBAs from places like Harvard or MIT, but she forced her voice out, articulating her concerns about certain aspects of the lab's data. She pointed out that while the early findings were promising, the sample size was too small and the methodology needed more peer review. An older executive glared at her. "And you are—" Before Nia could answer, Rand gave him a cool stare. "She's my consultant. You'll treat her with respect." The meeting continued with tension, but the founders eventually admitted that some data was preliminary. They insisted more rigorous testing was in the works, requiring significant capital. By the end, Rand agreed to an initial investment, but demanded strict milestones. Nia's observations seemed to nudge him to negotiate better terms, tying funding to verifiable peer-reviewed results. The founders reluctantly conceded. When the meeting ended, Rand strode out with the air of a man who had just fought a successful battle. His phone buzzed constantly with calls and messages, mostly from the West Coast, where rumors about Harrington Enterprises swirled. But at least he had made progress here. Nia followed him outside, a swirl of emotions in her chest. She couldn't believe she had played any role in this. That evening they returned to their hotel. Nia wanted to collapse from exhaustion, but Rand asked her to join him for dinner in the hotel's upscale restaurant to debrief. She complied, still feeling uneasy about crossing the invisible lines of power and class. Over a delicate seafood dish, Rand finally loosened his tie and leaned forward. "I suppose I owe you an explanation," he said, swirling a glass of red wine. Nia looked up. "You don't have to." "Perhaps not, but I will." His gaze hardened. "Karen is my half-sister. My father had an affair years ago. She grew up resenting us, or rather, resenting me. She was never fully acknowledged by my father's family. Now that he's dead, she wants a stake. But it's not just money. She wants to topple me to prove some twisted point about the sins of the father passing on. Naya listened quietly, recalling the overheard argument. I'm sorry. That sounds complicated. He let out a mirthless laugh. Complicated doesn't begin to cover it. She's convinced the Harrington empire belongs to her as much as it does to me. And maybe she's not entirely wrong, but her methods dragging my name through the mud, threatening to leak or even fabricate damaging stories are wrong. I've had to divert all my energy to contain the fallout. That's partly why I jumped on this biotech deal. It's a chance to shift headlines, remind the public that Harrington Enterprises invests in life-saving research. I see Nia said softly, swirling her water glass. I don't know what to say, except thank you for trusting me enough to include me in that meeting. Rand shrugged. You've worked hard. You see the value in medical research, and you're smart enough to catch details that some of these hotshot MBAs miss. Don't let it go to your head, though. She smiled slightly. I won't. He placed his glass down. Now let's talk about your finals. You have them next week, right? Naya grimaced. Yes. I have to get back to California soon. I can't miss those, otherwise my grades. Rand waved a dismissive hand. I'll have my jet take us back tomorrow. I won't be the reason you fail. They finished their dinner in relative silence, but the atmosphere had shifted. Rand had offered a glimpse into his vulnerabilities, and in turn treated Naya not merely as a maid, but as a valuable ally. The dynamic between them had changed, setting the stage for events neither of them could have predicted. Back in California, life seemed poised to return to normal for about a day. Naya took her final exams feeling confident. She was exhausted from the whirlwind trip, but also invigorated by the sense that her dreams were not as distant as she once believed. However, everything imploded 2 days later. Naya woke up to a frantic series of knocks on her door in the servants' quarters. It was another maid, eyes wide with panic. Nia, you need to get out here. Now, she threw on clothes, rushing into the main foyer, where a chaotic scene greeted her. Several men and women in suits paced with stern faces, some carrying folders and cameras. She recognized them as press or investigators. Johnson was trying to maintain control, but his face was ashen. Rand was nowhere to be seen. Finally, Johnson spotted her. Nia, it's the IRS and some federal agents, he managed in a hushed tone. They have a warrant. Her blood went cold. A warrant for what? For Harrington's financial records, among other things. There are accusations of money laundering and tax evasion. Karen must have found something real, or at least compelling enough to get the authorities involved. Naya's heart pounded. Had Rand done something illegal? Or was this another ploy by Karen? She had no way of knowing, but the presence of federal agents was chilling. They rifled through the mansion's offices, rummaging through files, computers, anything that might hold evidence. The staff was questioned. Naya, too, was pulled aside. An agent, tan suit, sharp gaze, asked her, "How long have you been employed here?" "About 8 months," she replied, voice shaky. "Have you ever handled or moved any confidential documents or been asked to do anything unusual by Mr. Harrington?" "No," she said firmly. "I only do housekeeping and study in the evening." The agent pressed on. "Are you aware of any suspicious financial activities? Any discrepancies in the accounts?" She shook her head, feeling both terrified and oddly protective. "No, sir." He studied her a moment, then wrote something down. "We'll be in touch." By noon, the agents left with boxes of documents. The house was in disarray. Rand had returned in the middle of the raid, but refused to speak to anyone. He retreated to his private study, slamming the door shut. Nia hovered in the hallway, debating whether to knock. Finally, she summoned the courage. "Come in," he snapped in response to her timid knock. She found him at his desk, tie undone, face ashen with a rage that bubbled under the surface. Papers were strewn everywhere. "Sir," he cut her off, voice hoarse. "Did you tell them anything?" She shook her head. "No, sir. I told them I only handle housekeeping." He exhaled slowly, the tension in his posture easing fractionally. "Good. Is it true?" she asked softly, not sure she should even be asking. "The allegations." Rand's eyes flashed. "No. But Karen and her allies must have fed the feds enough partial information to open a case. There may be some questionable transactions connected to my father's old deals, but I've never laundered money. I've never committed tax fraud. It's a witch hunt." Nia didn't press further. She simply said, "Is there anything I can do to help?" He gave a grim laugh. "I appreciate the offer, but I'll need an army of lawyers, not a housemaid." She nodded, fighting the sting of his dismissal. But she didn't leave. "Remember, you're not alone in this. You've helped me more than I can say. If there's anything I can do." Rand looked at her for a long moment. Then he sighed. "Thank you," he said in a low voice. "But this is my fight." Over the next weeks, headlines blared with scandalous allegations against Harrington Enterprises. Reporters camped outside the gates. The staff, especially the maids and butler, were told to remain discreet. Meanwhile, Rand barricaded himself in his study or spent long hours at his law firm's offices in downtown Los Angeles. Nia juggled her job with the swirling chaos around her. She had passed her finals with flying colors, receiving acceptance letters to several universities, including the University of California, Irvine. Excitement warred with fear. Could she even afford to go now if Harrington's finances were frozen or in crisis? She had come to rely on his support, but that might evaporate at any moment. One night, as she was preparing to sleep, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Nia, this is Dr. Miles. I have good news. We'd like you to intern at our lab this summer if you can manage it. Please call me." Her heart soared. An internship at UCI's lab. This was a dream come true. Exactly the sort of hands-on experience that could propel her into a career in pharmaceutical research. But how to break the news to Rand in the midst of his crisis? Later that evening, she worked up the nerve to knock on his study door. It was nearly midnight. He had a tumbler of whiskey on his desk, eyes red from exhaustion or frustration, or both. "What is it?" he asked, voice thick with weariness. "I just got an internship offer from Dr. Miles at UCI." Nia said carefully, entering the room. "They want me to start this summer." Rand regarded her with a slow blink, as if it took a moment to pass her words. That's good. You should do it." Relief flooded her. "Thank you. I was worried given everything." He cut her off with a wave of his hand. "This house, this job, they were always stepping stones for you, weren't they? Don't let my problems derail your life. If anything, I'm glad to know at least one good thing came out of my attempts to be philanthropic." Nia bit her lip. "Mr. Harrington, I want to see you come out of this okay. You've been good to me despite the rocky beginning. I can't just walk away without expressing how grateful I am." He gave her a weary half-smile. "I'll be fine. My lawyers are confident we can handle Karen's accusations. They might settle, or they might drag me through court for a while, but eventually the truth will come out." She nodded, sensing his vulnerability. "I hope so." Several days later, Rand called for an emergency meeting with the staff. Naya stood among the others in the grand foyer, heart beating wildly. He looked furious, a legal folder clenched in his hand. "We've discovered that someone inside the household has been feeding Karen and her cohorts private information," he said, voice trembling with anger. "Financial documents, schedules, personal correspondences. Someone here is a traitor." A shocked murmur rippled through the employees. Rand's eyes swept over them. Naya felt a chill grip her spine. Could anyone in the staff betray him so cruelly? Johnson stepped forward, voice quavering. "Sir, we are all loyal to the Harrington family. None of us would." Rand slammed the folder on a nearby table. "Lies. My investigators found records of an email chain to Karen's associates. These messages came from this very mansion. The device used had administrative access to certain accounts." A hush fell. Everyone stared at each other in suspicion. Finally, Rand's personal assistant, a woman named Layla, stood rigid, her eyes moist with fear. Rand looked at her with grim finality. "Layla, I trusted you with corporate documents. You had access to everything." She shook her head vehemently. "I swear I didn't do it." But Rand pulled out printed emails with her credentials, an IP address that traced back to her laptop. Tears welled in her eyes. She crumpled to her knees, sobbing, claiming she was framed. Rand refused to listen summarily, firing her on the spot. The staff watched in horror as security escorted her out of the mansion. Naya felt a stab of pity. She wasn't entirely convinced Layla was guilty, but the evidence seemed damning. Was Karen so cunning as to frame someone else? Or was Layla truly the betrayer? In the aftermath of Layla's firing, the household felt emptier, like a ghostly echo lingered in every corridor. Rand grew colder, secluding himself more and more. Nevertheless, the legal maelstrom showed signs of subsiding. The authorities had seized enough documents to keep them busy for months, and the scandal-hungry media had turned its attention to another celebrity meltdown, giving Harrington Enterprises some breathing room. Nia received confirmation of her summer internship start date from Dr. Miles. She also got the official acceptance letter to UCI, complete with a modest scholarship package. Though it wouldn't cover everything, it was a huge relief. She just had to figure out how to handle the rest of the finances. One afternoon, Rand summoned her to his study. She found him behind his desk, eyes heavy with exhaustion, yet tinged with a peculiar intensity. He spoke without preamble. "I understand you've decided to accept the internship and start at UCI. When do you leave Nia swallowed?" "In 3 weeks. I'll be moving into a small dorm. I'll be working part-time somewhere to cover expenses." Rand exhaled. "I want to pay the difference in your tuition that your scholarship doesn't cover. Consider it a loan if you must, but I want to see you finish your degree." Her heart soared and sank all at once. She was immeasurably grateful, but also worried about taking money from a man whose fortune was potentially in jeopardy. "You've already done so much." "I'm not sure." He waved a hand. "I insist. And for what it's worth, I'm proud of what you've achieved here." Tears prickled in her eyes. This was the closest thing to genuine warmth he had ever shown. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded, looking away as though embarrassed. Go do great things in that lab. Just remember who gave you a leg up when you're famous someday, curing diseases or whatever. She managed a choked laugh. I'll never forget. Naya's final weeks at the Harrington mansion passed in a blur. She packed her belongings, said goodbye to the staff who'd become like family, and prepared for a new chapter. But just days before her departure, another bombshell exploded. Federal indictments. The Department of Justice had formally charged Harrington Enterprises with multiple counts of financial misconduct related to shell companies allegedly set up by Rand's late father. While Rand himself was not directly charged at first, the net was tightening around his empire. Stocks plummeted overnight, investors fled, and the board of Harrington Enterprises began to question Rand's leadership. In a move that stunned everyone, the board issued a statement distancing themselves from Rand, citing a need for fresh leadership. Rand was effectively sidelined from the day-to-day operations of the company he had spent decades building. The mansion was put under more intense scrutiny, and rumors swirled that he might have to liquidate assets to pay massive legal fees. Nia learned of this development on the news. That evening, Rand called her into his office one last time. His face was pale eyes, hollow. They've forced me out. Temporarily, at least. My own father's sins are coming back to devour me. The board is using it as an excuse to remove me and install a puppet CEO. Nia's heart clenched. I'm so sorry. Is there any chance you can? He shook his head bitterly. I'll fight it in court. But it's going to be a long battle. In the meantime, I might have to sell off the estate. This house, it's become a symbol of everything the public hates about me. I'm being labeled as a corrupt billionaire who profited from dirty money. My father's money. She wanted to console him, to say something that would help, but her words felt small. Maybe it's a chance to start fresh away from the shadows of your father's reputation, she ventured carefully. He gave a mirthless laugh. Ironic, isn't it? I built a life of luxury, trying to outrun my father's legacy, and it still caught me. But I do have one more thing to do before I lose everything. He slid a folder across the desk toward her. Inside were papers, a fully executed scholarship and living expense agreement guaranteed by what was left of the Harrington Philanthropic Fund. It ensured that her tuition at UCI and basic living costs would be covered for the next 2 years, even if Harrington Enterprises collapsed. Naya's eyes widened with grateful shock. This is too much. He looked away. It's done. You deserve this chance. Just promise me you'll use it well. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She leaned forward impulsively, hugging him around the shoulders. He stiffened for a second, then patted her arm awkwardly. It was the closest they'd ever come to a genuine familial moment. 1 year later. A year after Naya left the Harrington mansion, she was deep into her studies at UCI and thriving in her internship at Dr. Miles's lab. She had published 2 co-authored papers on immunotherapy research. Her professors praised her dedication and insight. She was well on her way to achieving her dream. Rand, on the other hand, had waged a war in the courts. Karen's relentless pursuit to destroy him bore mixed results. On one hand, it was revealed that a significant portion of the Harrington family fortune had indeed been funneled through questionable channels activities orchestrated mainly by Rand's father, long before Rand took the reins. But Rand was not entirely innocent. Some of his expansions had skirted ethical boundaries. Though he avoided prison time, the reputational damage was severe. He lost the mansion, many of his properties, and ended up paying hefty settlements. Karen got a portion of what she wanted, an inheritance, a slice of Harrington Enterprises. But her own dirty tactics were exposed in the process, leaving her name stained by scandal. She might have won some money, but she lost any sympathy the public might have had for her claim to the Harrington lineage. She became a pariah in social circles, known for destroying the very family empire she sought to possess. As for Rand, he chose a quiet life after the dust settled. He purchased a modest home near the beach, far less grand than his former estate, but he seemed oddly at peace. He continued to invest in small biotech startups, forging a personal mission to support medical research more directly. He was no longer the omnipotent billionaire, but he'd found a moral center he had long neglected. On a sunny afternoon, Nia visited him at his new place, wanting to share her research progress. The house was warm, inviting a far cry from the imposing fortress she once cleaned. They sat on a balcony overlooking the waves, sipping iced tea. "I see you're making headlines again," Rand teased, pointing to a copy of Nature magazine where her name appeared in a research article. This time for something good. She beamed. "Thanks to you. Without your help, I'd probably be struggling at 2 jobs just to scrape by in community college." He waved it off. "You got here on your own merit. I just gave you a push." She chuckled. "A push that changed my life." They smiled at each other. Outside, the ocean rumbled gently against the shore. Inside, the air was filled with the unspoken acknowledgement of how far they both had come, and how, in the strangest twist of fate, they had each found a path to redemption and self-discovery. And so the billionaire, who once found his black maid studying late at night, found a new purpose amidst the ruins of his old life. In helping her see her dreams realized, he somehow salvaged what truly mattered within himself. In the end, life rarely unfolds in a straight line. Sometimes it's the unexpected spark, like a billionaire discovering his maid's late-night studies, that sets off a chain reaction of upheaval, self-discovery, and transformation. Randolph Harrington lost nearly everything he once valued. Yet in those ashes he found a sliver of redemption by helping Nia achieve her dreams. Nia stepped into the future she had always imagined, armed with newfound knowledge, determination, and gratitude. Meanwhile, Karen's thirst for revenge brought her only partial victory, a bittersweet outcome that cost her any real sense of peace. Thank you for listening to this roller coaster tale of ambition, betrayal, and second chances. If you found the story inspiring, thought-provoking, or just wildly entertaining, please show your support by hitting the like button, sharing it with friends who love a good drama, and subscribing to the channel for more captivating stories. Your support keeps our storytelling alive